The wind was dry and full of dust. Nothing green grew on the cracked ground. The sun was too hot, and the sky was empty. The alien village was silent, except for the soft crying of hungry children. Bones could be seen under their thin purple skin. Mothers had no food left to give, and fathers had stopped speaking. The crops had died years ago, and the food machines were broken. Everyone waited for the end, because hope had left a long time ago. Then something strange happened. A loud sound came from the sky, like thunder mixed with screaming metal. All the aliens looked up, their weak eyes wide. A fireball was falling fast from the sky. It crashed into the field with a giant boom, throwing dust and fire everywhere. The villagers ran to the crash site. Though their legs shook with weakness, smoke rose from the broken ship, and metal pieces lay scattered across the ground. Then something moved in the wreckage. A small figure climbed out, coughing and waving away the smoke. He was not purple like the villagers. His skin was light brown. His clothes were torn, and his backpack was half burned. It was a human boy, maybe 15 years old. He fell to his knees, breathing hard, and then looked up at the crowd of aliens staring at him. He gave a weak smile and said, "Hi, I didn't mean to crash here." The villagers stepped back in fear. Some whispered that he could be a danger. The village chief, an old alien with deep scars, walked forward. "We do not have food for our own," he said coldly. "Leave." The boy looked confused, then reached into his backpack and pulled out a small packet. He opened it and offered a piece of dry bread. No one moved until a little alien girl stepped forward. Her name was Nara, and she was known for her bright eyes and quiet courage. She took the bread carefully and shared it with the younger children near her. They ate slowly, and their eyes filled with tears. The chief looked at her, then at the boy. "What do you want, human?" he asked. The boy stood up straight, though. He was shaking. "My name is Alex," he said, "and I don't want anything. I want to help." "Help?" the chief said with a bitter laugh. "We are dying, and you are alone." Alex looked around and saw broken machines lying around the edge of the village. Old tools, rusted pipes, wires, gears, and cracked screens. He walked over and picked up a piece of metal, then another. His eyes lit up like he had found treasure. "You have so much stuff here," Alex said with excitement. The chief frowned. "Trash," he replied. Alex smiled. "No, not trash. Tools." The villagers didn't understand. How could garbage help them? Alex dropped his backpack and pulled out some small gadgets. A tiny torch, a wire cutter, and some batteries. He knelt beside a broken food machine and opened its side. Dust came out, but Alex didn't stop. He worked with careful hands, whispering to himself as he looked at the wires inside. Nara sat beside him, watching with interest. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm trying to see how it works," Alex said. "If I can fix it, maybe we can make food again." The villagers laughed, but their laughter was weak and full of pain. "Let him play," someone said. "Hope is already dead." But Nara didn't laugh. She went around the village and collected more pieces of broken junk. She brought them to Alex, one by one, together. They made a small pile beside the machine. The sun began to set, and the sky turned orange. Alex kept working, his face covered in sweat and dirt. Finally, he stood up and looked at the chief. "I need more trash," he said, "as much as you can find." The chief narrowed his eyes. "If this is a trick, human, we will not be kind." "It's not," Alex said quietly. "I think I can help your village, but I need time and junk." Nara looked up at her people. "Please," she said, "let him try." The chief didn't speak for a moment. Then he gave a slow nod. "Tomorrow," he said. "You can have one day." As the night came, Alex lay under the stars, staring up at the sky. He was alone on an alien world, surrounded by strangers. But for the first time in days, he felt something warm inside like purpose. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I won't let them starve." And in the dark, the broken machine gave a tiny spark. The sun rose slowly over the dry land, casting long shadows over the broken village. But one shadow was moving, crawling on hands and knees through old junk piles. It was the human boy, Alex, and his face was filled with deep focus. His hands were covered in dust and oil, and his clothes had more holes than fabric. Aliens peeked from behind old walls, watching the strange human who had come from the sky. They whispered to each other, some with fear, others with hope. But none of them stepped forward except the small girl, Nara. She brought him a cracked energy cell and a bent copper coil. Alex smiled when he saw it, like she had just handed him gold. "Perfect," he said, sliding the coil into his collection of junk. Nara tilted her head. "How do you know what to use?" Alex looked up at the sun, then back at her. "Because I used to build small things back home, in my junkyard." The machine he was trying to fix looked like a forgotten beast from another time. Wires stuck out like bones, and metal panels hung loose like broken armor. Alex had already connected some old batteries and replaced a fuse using melted plastic and a spoon. Now he was building something new beside it. It looked like a strange box with fans on top and a spinning core inside. "What is that?" Nara asked, her large eyes blinking. "It's a solar pulse starter," Alex said with a grin. "If I can't fix the old power system, I'll make a new one." Nara blinked again, then nodded like she understood. Even if she didn't, she believed in him. And that was enough. Around noon, the machine made a low clicking sound. Alex jumped up, his heart racing. He pressed a few buttons and stepped back. Lights flickered on the old panel for the first time in years. Then with a soft hum, the machine began to glow. A smell drifted out of it. Sweet, strange, but not unpleasant. The villagers came running, drawn by the sound and the scent. Children with wide eyes and empty stomachs stood still, afraid to hope. A small square of food dropped from the machine with a soft thump. Alex picked it up carefully, then turned to the crowd. "It worked," he said, holding it out. Nobody moved. The chief stepped forward slowly, his eyes cold. "Is it poison?" "No," Alex said. "It's just nutrient paste, not tasty, but it keeps you alive." A brave old alien stepped out from the crowd, thin and shaking. He took the food from Alex's hand and bit into it. His jaw moved slowly, and after a long pause, his eyes filled with tears. "It tastes like memory," he said softly. "Like the food my father gave me long ago." The villagers gasped and rushed forward, begging for more. But just as the second cube dropped, the machine sparked. Smoke burst from the side, and the humming stopped. Alex ran forward, trying to stop the smoke. But it was too late. The machine had broken again. "You promised," the chief shouted, stepping toward him. "You gave us hope, then crushed it." Alex stood frozen, breathing fast, his hands black with ash. I can fix it again," he said. "I just need one part, a stable power link." The crowd shouted in anger, and some picked up stones. Then Nara stepped in front of him, arms wide. "No," she shouted. "He's the only one who tried to help." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small glowing cube. "I found this when I was little," she said. "I kept it because it was pretty, but maybe it's what he needs." Alex's eyes lit up when he saw the cube. He took it with shaking hands and looked at the design. "It's perfect," he whispered. "It might actually work." The chief looked at Nara, then at the crowd. "Give him one more chance," he said, voice low. "But if he fails again, he must go." Alex nodded and got back to work. Hours passed as he took apart his broken system and added the glowing cube. The sun began to set, and the crowd watched in silence. Finally, Alex stood and wiped sweat from his eyes. He pressed the button once more. The machine clicked, whirred, and then a soft hum filled the air again. But this time, the machine opened a hidden panel. Inside, glowing lines of ancient alien text began to scroll across the screen. Alex stepped back in shock. "This isn't just a food machine," he whispered. "It's a library." The crowd stared, not knowing what he meant. But one thing was clear. The human had done something impossible. He had brought their dead machine back to life, and in doing so, He had opened a door to something much, much bigger. The strange sound coming from the old machine didn't stop. It got louder. Like a soft song in a forgotten language. The villagers stood frozen, their eyes locked on the glowing screen. Alex didn't move either, his hands still hovering near. The panel, lines of alien text rolled across the screen like waves. No one could read it anymore, not even the chief. But the machine remembered. It remembered everything. Then a small click echoed through the air. The hidden panel on the side opened again. A tiny food cube dropped out and rolled onto the dusty ground. Alex picked it up quickly and offered it to Nara. "Try this one," he said, his voice quiet. "It might be better than before." Nara took a bite, chewed slowly, and her eyes widened. "It tastes like the old festival cakes," she whispered. An old woman behind her gasped. "I remember that taste." More cubes began to fall from the machine, this time glowing slightly. The smell in the air changed. It was no longer just survival food. It smelled like memory, like comfort, like something lost long ago. The villagers stepped closer, their fear melting into wonder. But then, something went wrong. The machine made a loud beep, and the lights turned red. The food output stopped, and the screen flashed a warning in alien script. Alex rushed to the panel, reading the error code even though he didn't understand the language. He followed the wiring with his fingers, tracing the problem. Then the humming stopped, and the village went quiet again. Everyone stared at him, some with hope, others with rising fear. "Did you break it again?" Someone shouted. "No." Alex said quickly, "It shut itself down." "Maybe a safety system." The chief stepped forward, his eyes hard. "Is it dangerous?" Alex didn't answer right away. He opened another panel and found something strange, a box with blinking blue lights and symbols. It looked newer than the rest of the machine, like it had been added later, and something about it felt wrong. "This part doesn't belong," Alex said softly. He pulled it out slowly, and as soon as he did, the screen flickered. New symbols appeared, but this time, they were not just warnings. They were maps, diagrams, even voices. One of the voices spoke in a slow, deep, alien tongue. The villagers gasped, many stepping back in fear. Alex leaned closer, trying to understand. Nara stood beside him, whispering, "What is it saying?" "I think it's teaching," Alex replied. "It's showing how to build things. Machines, engines, tools." The chief narrowed his eyes. "This machine is more than a food maker," Alex nodded. "It's a library. Your ancestors must have used it to pass on knowledge." The chief walked up to the crowd and raised his voice. "Someone hid this knowledge," he said. "Someone didn't want us to know our past." Gasps echoed through the crowd, and fear turned to anger. An old man shouted, "Who would do such a thing?" Then from the edge of the village, a slow clap broke the silence. Everyone turned. An alien with dark robes and a sharp smile stepped out from behind a broken wall. "I would," he said coldly. "And I still will." The villagers stepped back. As the man walked toward the machine, Alex stood in front of it, arms spread wide. "Who are you?" "I am the reason this village still listens to the chief," the stranger said. "The reason they obeyed and feared, instead of learning and rising." He pointed at the glowing machine. "And now you've broken my silence." Nara stepped forward. "You knew the machine worked." "Yes," he said. "And I kept it quiet, because hungry people follow easier than strong ones." Alex clenched his fists. "You let them starve," the man shrugged. "Better than rebellion." He pulled a small device from his robe. "Something sharp and humming with energy. I'm going to destroy it, and then the villagers will forget again." But before he could take another step, a soft growl came from behind him. Everyone turned to see one of the young alien boys holding a metal pipe. Then another stepped forward, and another. Even the elders picked up old tools and sharp rocks. Nara looked at the man and said, "We remember now." The stranger looked around. Seeing he was outnumbered, he hissed and stepped back, disappearing into the shadows. But Alex knew he would return. The villagers slowly turned back to the human boy. The chief nodded. "You gave us more than food." Alex looked down at the glowing machine and whispered, "I think it's only the beginning." The silence after the stranger vanished was not peaceful. It was thick, heavy, like the air before a storm. Alex stared at the crowd, at their confused faces, at the broken past that had suddenly come alive. The old machine still glowed softly behind him, whispering secrets in a language no one could fully understand. But deep inside it, something had shifted. It wasn't just a food maker anymore. It had become a key, and someone had tried to lock the door it opened. Alex sat beside it, tools in hand, hands shaking just a little. He had faced broken wires, hunger, even fear. But now there was something else. A hidden enemy who didn't want the truth to come out. And that enemy had already touched this machine, poisoned it. He had to find out how deep the damage went. Nara brought him a warm cloth and a small jug of water. He wiped the sweat from his face and nodded a quiet thank you. Around them, the villagers whispered, not in anger, but in confusion and worry. They had seen something impossible. And now they were afraid it would be taken away again. Alex opened another panel in the side of the machine. Inside, he found layers of melted plastic and loose wires, some of them still hot. He touched one wire and flinched, his fingers burned slightly. The power grid was unstable, and it was getting worse. The food machine had worked once, maybe twice, but if he didn't fix the core link soon, it would shut down for good or worse, explode. He leaned back and looked up at the broken solar collector on the roof of an old hut. It was rusty, half buried in dust, but it might hold the answer. "I need that panel," he told Nara, pointing. She nodded and ran to get help. Within minutes, young aliens were climbing onto the roof, pulling off the solar pieces. They brought them to Alex, who smiled through his exhaustion. As he worked, his vision blurred, but he kept moving. He didn't have time to sleep, not with the machine dying and the village depending on him. He built a new power converter using scraps of old wires, coins, and a melted spoon. Then he placed the solar plates at an angle, using rocks to hold them steady. The sun hit them just right, and energy flowed again. The machine hummed once more, not strong, but steady. The lights blinked green, and a low, clean pulse came from deep inside it. But something else happened too. The ground below it began to shake, just slightly, and the dirt cracked open. A hidden panel under the machine lifted slowly, revealing stairs made of smooth black stone. The villagers gasped, stepping back. Alex stared at the opening, heart pounding. He grabbed a small light from his pack and started down the steps. Nara followed without a word. The air below was cool, untouched by time. At the bottom of the stairs was a large chamber, round, quiet, full of dust and strange symbols glowing on the walls. In the center stood another machine, much older than the one above, but still alive. A soft voice came from it, deep and echoing, speaking in that same ancient alien tongue. Alex stepped closer, and suddenly the voice changed. It spoke in English now, rough and broken. "Welcome, user. System was locked for 1,000 years. He looked back at Nara, eyes wide. "It knows who I am. System alert." The voice continued. "Foreign control detected. Virus installed. Safety core damaged." Alex stepped forward and placed his hand on the panel. "Can you fix it?" "Manual override required. Core stability low." He opened the side panel of the second machine. Inside, he saw it an orb, cracked, flickering with weak light. This was the real heart of the system, and it was dying. If it failed, not just the food supply would stop, every bit of stored knowledge, history, and power would vanish. Alex pulled out every tool he had. He began to patch the orb using melted wire and reflective tape from his suit. His hands moved fast but careful. Nara watched quietly, holding her breath. Above them, the villagers stood near the glowing machine, watching the stairs. They didn't know what was happening, but they felt something changing, and in the distance, the shadow of the enemy watched too, hidden behind broken walls. His smile was gone now, replaced by cold eyes. deep below the village. The orb sparked once more, then glowed brighter. Alex made one final connection, closed the panel, and whispered, "Please work." The lights flashed blue, then green, and a calm voice said, "System stabilized." He leaned back against the wall, breathing hard. Nara smiled and said softly, "You did it." Alex shook his head. "Not yet." He looked at the screen in front of him, because now the machine was showing something new: blueprints, maps, locations, and one word flashing at the bottom: forbiddance. The word kept blinking on the screen like it was alive. Forbiddance. Alex stared at it, feeling a cold wind blow through the underground chamber, even though there was no wind. Nara stepped closer to the glowing panel, her hand slightly shaking. As she pointed at the map forming beneath the warning, there were tunnels drawn in glowing green lines, twisting under the village and reaching far into the hills. Beside one path was a symbol that looked like a sun crossed with a bolt of lightning. Alex didn't know what it meant, but the machine whispered a single word in its soft voice: power. They followed the map deeper into the stone corridor, each step echoing like a drum in their ears. The tunnel lights turned on as they walked, like they were being welcomed or watched. Nara touched one of the walls and said, "These stones feel warm." Alex nodded, because he felt it too, like the tunnel itself was alive. They passed ancient doors made of smooth metal, most of them sealed shut, but one door had been forced open long ago, and inside, the room was empty. Only scorch marks on the wall and a broken screen were left behind. Alex looked at the damage and whispered, "Someone came here before us." Nara's voice was small. "Maybe the man in the dark robe." Alex didn't answer, but his mind was racing. If that man knew about these tunnels, what else had he taken or destroyed? They reached the end of the map, where a small chamber held something strange. It looked like a machine, but not like the others. This one was shaped like a flower with silver petals, closed tightly. The panel beside it glowed red, and a deep voice came from inside the chamber. "Warning, ancient weapon access denied." Alex stepped back, heart pounding. He hadn't come here to find weapons. He just wanted to help the village survive, not unlock something dangerous. But the machine kept speaking, showing images of the past old videos, fuzzy and broken. Alien scientists working in the tunnels, building things, testing energy beams, arguing about safety, and then silence. As if everything ended in one moment. The final image showed the village long ago, green, bright, full of life. The people smiled, children played, food grew everywhere, and in the corner of the screen was a single word in their language. "Before." Alex turned to Nara. "Your people were strong once." She nodded slowly. "Before we forgot." He looked back at the strange machine with the closed pedals and said, "And someone made sure you did." Suddenly, the lights in the tunnel flickered. A loud sound echoed through the hallway: footsteps, heavy and slow. Nara grabbed Alex's arm, and they hid behind a support beam. A group of masked figures passed by, led by the dark-robed man. He was talking to someone through a small device, his voice clear and cold. "They've already activated part of the system. We must shut it down before the human learns too much." Alex's blood froze. They weren't just trying to break the machine. They were trying to erase everything. Again, he waited until they were gone, then whispered to Nara, "We have to get out of here and warn the others." They ran through a side tunnel, following the blinking signs from the machine. The stairs back to the village were long and steep, but they climbed fast. When they reached the top, the sunlight burned their eyes, but the fresh air gave them hope. Villagers gathered around as they returned, their faces filled with questions. Alex stepped onto a broken crate and shouted, "They're coming," he said. The man in the black robe and others like him, they want to destroy everything. The villagers murmured in fear, some stepping back, others clenching their fists. "We found something underground," Nara added. "Something powerful and old, something that belongs to all of you." The chief pushed through the crowd, his face hard. "Did you find food?" "Yes," Alex said. "And more than that, we found knowledge." The chief narrowed his eyes. Then protect it, before anyone could ask more. The alarm on the main machine began to ring. It flashed red, showing a new signal, a door opening. A cistern shutting down. The attackers were already inside the tunnels. And this time, they weren't just coming to hide the past. They were coming to end the future. Alex looked at the crowd and raised his voice. If you want to be free, you have to fight for your history. The villagers stood silent for a moment. Then slowly, they picked up old tools, broken weapons, even cooking pots. Their hands shook, but their eyes were steady, for the first time in generations. They weren't just waiting to be saved. They were ready to stand beside the human boy who had fallen from the sky. And together, they would face whatever came next. The sky was no longer quiet. A strange sound rose from the hills, a pulsing beat like metal marching across rock. Alex stood on top of the food machine, watching the dust grow thicker on the horizon. His fingers were clenched tight around a broken pipe, his only weapon. Beside him stood Nara, holding a slingshot made from elastic wire and a small energy cell. She wasn't afraid anymore. The villagers had turned their fear into fire. Mothers carried sharpened poles. Children held heavy stones. Old farmers tied scrap metal to their arms and legs like armor. No one ran, no one hid. They had all gathered in the center of the village, protecting the food machine, protecting the knowledge buried beneath it. They had lost everything before, and they would not lose again. The enemy arrived without a word. The dark-robed man led the way, followed by masked figures in black suits. Their boots crushed the ground like they had already won. The leader raised his hand and pointed at the machine. "You have one chance," he said. "Step away and return to silence." Alex jumped down from the machine, dust rising as he landed. He walked to the front of the villagers and stared straight at the stranger. "You had your silence," Alex said. "Now it's our turn to speak." The man's eyes narrowed, and he raised a small round device with a flick of his wrist. It lit up and fired a pulse at the ground. The shockwave knocked several villagers off their feet, but they got back up. A young alien threw a stone at the enemy, and it hit one of the masked soldiers in the helmet. That was the moment it all began. The battle wasn't clean, and it wasn't fair. The villagers had no real weapons, but they had the fire of people who refused to starve again. Alex ran through the chaos, dodging attacks and pulling open power panels on the enemy machines. He rewired one using a coin and a screwdriver, causing it to spark and fall. Nara moved like a shadow, using her slingshot to disable lights and distract attackers. She was fast, smart, and always aiming to protect the young ones. The chief himself picked up a metal staff and knocked an enemy to the ground, shouting words of old strength in their lost language. But the dark-robed man was not fighting like the others. He moved toward the food machine, pushing past his own soldiers. He reached it and placed a strange black cube onto its side. The cube spread wires like a spider, crawling into the machine. Alex saw it too late. "No," he shouted. Running toward the machine, he jumped through fire and smoke, tackled the man just as the cube turned red. They rolled across the dirt, fists swinging. The cube still glowing behind them. Alex punched with everything he had, but the man grabbed his wrist and whispered, "You think you've saved them, but they're weak. They'll fall again," Alex growled. "Not while I'm here." Nara appeared beside them and swung a metal pipe at the enemy's head, knocking him out cold. Alex rushed to the cube and yanked it free. The machine sparked but stayed alive, humming low like it was breathing again. The last of the masked attackers ran when they saw their leader fall. Some villagers chased them away with loud roars and flying stones. And then, suddenly, the village was quiet again. The dust settled, and the people gathered around the machine. Alex stood with the cube in his hand, broken wires hanging from it. Nara looked at him, her face tired but full of pride. "You stopped him," she whispered. Alex looked around at the faces, dirty, bruised, but smiling. "No," he said. "We stopped him." The chief stepped forward, his voice steady. "You brought us back from the edge." Alex shook his head. You just needed someone to remind you who you were. The machine gave a soft chime and opened a new panel. Inside were seeds, small, glowing, wrapped in strange leaves. The voice spoke once more. Slow and warm. Gift of growth, it said. Begin again. Everyone stared at the seeds like they were stars fallen from the sky. Nara took one and held it close, her eyes full of wonder. The villagers began to cry, not from fear, but from something they had forgotten: hope. Alex looked at the old food machine, now part of their home, part of their story. He knew the fight wasn't over. But something had changed forever. The village had stood up together, and that was something no enemy could ever erase. The first green sprout broke through the cracked ground like a miracle. It was small, weak, and shaking in the wind, but it was alive. Nara dropped to her knees beside it, her hands covering her mouth. She had never seen a living plant before. Not with her own eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from something she had never truly felt until now: hope. Around her, more sprouts appeared, tiny green points poking through the dirt like stars in the dark. Villagers gasped and began to cheer softly, some falling to the ground in thanks. Alex stood a few steps back, watching. His hands were covered in oil, his shirt torn, but his smile was quiet and proud. It had taken days to clean the machine, to rebuild what was broken during the attack. He had used nearly everything in his bag: batteries, tape, even parts from his own ship, but it was worth it. The food machine no longer only made cubes, now it created seed packets. Each one matched to the soil and air of the alien world. The ancient knowledge hidden inside the library had become maps, instructions, even old songs the villagers had forgotten. Children gathered around Alex every night, asking him to read the glowing screens out loud. They listened with wide eyes, learning about their past as they dreamed of their future. The dark-robed man had been locked away in the same chamber he tried to erase. The chief said he would face the village council once they were ready to rebuild it. For now, the people had more important work: planting, learning, and preparing for the first true harvest in generations. Alex fixed the final solar panel that morning, placing it high on a wooden pole. The sun hit it perfectly, and the machine gave a soft hum of thanks. He sat beside it, breathing deeply, his body sore but peaceful. He had come to this planet by accident, but now it felt like he had landed exactly where he was needed. Nara joined him, sitting cross-legged and holding one of the glowing seed packets. You changed everything, she said softly. Alex looked at her and smiled. No, I just helped you remember who you really are. A small alien child ran up to him, holding a piece of metal shaped like a flower. He handed it to Alex and said, "We made this for you." Alex turned it over in his hands. It was rough, uneven, but beautiful. The petals were made from broken circuit boards, the stem from old wire. It's perfect, Alex said, his voice low. Thank you. The chief stood before the crowd that evening, his voice louder than ever. This boy came from the sky, carrying nothing but scraps, he said. But he gave us more than food, more than light. He gave us the truth. The villagers clapped, and some shouted Alex's name. He blushed and tried to hide behind Nara, but she laughed and pushed him forward. Later that night, under the stars, the villagers held their first real feast. It wasn't much, just a few food cubes and a pot of wild roots, but it felt like a king's meal. Alex sat in the middle of it all, telling stories about Earth, about his junkyard home and how he once built a toaster from old fan parts. The aliens listened like he was telling ancient legends, their laughter rising into the night sky. As the fire burned low, Nara leaned closer to him and whispered, "Will you stay?" Alex looked up at the stars, the same stars that had once been so far, so cold. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe I'm meant to crash wherever I'm needed." She smiled. "Well, if you ever crash here again, we'll keep your room ready." He laughed quietly, then reached into his bag and pulled out a small Earth flag, torn and dirty, but still whole. He placed it next to the glowing machine, beside the seeds, as if to say, "A human was here." Next morning, as the sun rose over a green field for the first time in years, a new chapter began, not just for the alien village, but for the bond between two worlds, not written in stars, but in scraps and kindness, in courage and trash-made miracles. And it all started with one boy who crashed from the sky and saw treasure where others saw junk, not because he was special, but because he believed they were.